What if you were accused of stealing something that was already yours? Imagine standing by your own car only to have a stranger call the cops on you. Like the video and subscribe for more content like this. It was a warm Sunday afternoon in Jackson, Mississippi. The sun hung high in the sky, and the air smelled like barbecue and fresh-cut grass. Jamal Foster had just stepped out of the grocery store, carrying 2 paper bags filled with food for the week. He hummed to himself as he walked across the parking lot toward his silver Dodge Charger. As he reached into his pocket for his keys, a sharp voice cut through the air. "Excuse me, what do you think you're doing?" Jamal turned, confused. A middle-aged white woman with short blonde hair and oversized sunglasses stood a few feet away. She clutched her designer purse like it contained state secrets. Jamal blinked. "I'm getting into my car," she scoffed, folding her arms. "I don't think so. That's not your car." Jamal let out a short laugh, thinking this was some kind of misunderstanding. "Yeah, it is. I've had it for 3 years." He held up his key fob and pressed the unlock button. The Charger beeped twice, its headlights flashing. The woman gasped and took a step back. "Oh my God, you have some kind of device to hack into cars, don't you?" Jamal's smile faded. "Excuse me?" "I know what's going on here," she snapped. "You're stealing that car. I've seen this before. These criminals use fake keys to break in." Jamal's patience thinned. "Lady, I don't have time for this. This is my car, and I'm leaving." He started to open the driver's side door. The woman fumbled in her purse and pulled out her phone. "Oh, no, you're not. I'm calling the cops." Jamal sighed, rubbing his temple. He had heard about situations like this, black men being harassed for simply existing in public spaces, but he never thought it would happen to him. "Ma'am, if you just wait a second, I can show you my registration." "I don't need to see anything," she interrupted. "I'm reporting this right now." She jabbed at her phone screen, her voice trembling as she spoke. "Yes, I'm at the Piggly Wiggly parking lot. A man is trying to steal a car. He's black, wearing jeans and a gray t-shirt. Hurry, he looks dangerous." Jamal exhaled through his nose, gripping the car door. This was ridiculous. He could walk away, but that might make him look guilty. He could argue, but that could escalate things. So, he waited. 10 minutes later, the sound of sirens filled the air. 2 police cruisers pulled into the lot, lights flashing. A moment later, 2 officers stepped out. One older, one younger. Both had hands resting near their holsters. The woman rushed toward them, pointing wildly at Jamal. "That's him. That's the thief." The older officer, Sergeant Grayson, eyed Jamal. "Sir, step away from the vehicle." Jamal raised his hand slightly. "This is my car, officer. I can prove it." The younger cop narrowed his eyes. "Then prove it." But when the truth came out, things took an unexpected turn. Jamal took a steady breath, trying to keep his frustration in check. He wasn't about to let this spiral out of control. "Officer, my registration is in the glove compartment," he said calmly. "My ID is in my wallet." Sergeant Grayson nodded but kept his expression unreadable. "Slowly, take out your wallet and hand it to me." Jamal complied, pulling out his driver's license and holding it out. The officer took it, glancing between the ID and Jamal's face. Before he could say anything, the woman, her name now revealed to be Linda Hayes, interrupted. "Oh, come on, officer. He probably stole that, too. Run the plates. I bet you anything the car is registered to someone else." Grayson sighed, already seeming irritated with her theatrics. "Ma'am, let us do our job." The younger cop, Officer Daniels, walked around to check the license plate while Grayson radioed in Jamal's information. Jamal crossed his arms, watching Linda as she stood there smugly, convinced she was about to witness his arrest. He had seen her type before, the kind of person who believed her accusations carried more weight simply because of the color of his skin. 2 minutes later, Grayson's radio crackled. "Vehicle registration matches the ID. The car belongs to a Jamal Foster." The officer raised an eyebrow at Linda. "Ma'am, The car is his. Linda blinked. That's not possible. He must have done something to the records. Jamal let out a short laugh. Now I'm hacking DMV records? Lady, just admit you were wrong. But Linda wasn't done. She turned to Officer Daniels. Look in the trunk. Maybe he has stolen items in there. You should search him. Grayson held up a hand. Ma'am, that's enough. You called us for a car theft that didn't happen. Linda scoffed. I was just being a good citizen. How was I supposed to know he wasn't stealing it? Grayson exchanged a glance with Daniels, then folded his arms. Actually, you made a false police report. That's a crime. Linda's face drained of color. What? Filing a false report wastes police resources and puts innocent people at risk, Grayson said. Right now, I could arrest you. Linda stepped back, her voice suddenly softer. But I was just trying to help. Jamal shook his head. Help who? Yourself. Officer Daniels spoke up. Ma'am, we'll need you to come with us for questioning. Linda's mouth fell open. You can't be serious. Grayson clipped his radio back onto his belt. Dead serious. Let's go. Jamal watched as the officers escorted Linda toward their cruiser. A strange mix of satisfaction and exhaustion settled over him. 5 minutes later, as Jamal finally got into his car, he couldn't help but think, how many times had this happened to other black men who weren't lucky enough to have proof on their side? Jamal sat in his car for a moment, gripping the steering wheel as he watched Linda argue with the officers. She was flailing her arms, her voice rising in pitch. This is insane. I was only trying to protect my community. Sergeant Grayson shook his head. Ma'am, calling the police on someone without evidence is not protecting anything. It's harassment. Jamal exhaled, pressing his fingers to his temples. This could have gone so much worse. If the officers had believed Linda right away, he could have been cuffed, humiliated, or worse. He turned the key in the ignition, the familiar hum of the Charger's engine grounding him. Just as he was about to put the car in reverse, he heard a knock on his window. It was Officer Daniels. Jamal hesitated, then rolled the window down. Yes, officer? Daniels glanced back at Linda, who was still pleading with Grayson. Listen, I know that wasn't fair to you, he said. You kept your cool, and I respect that. Jamal tilted his head. Is that supposed to make me feel better? Daniels sighed. No, but I figure you've dealt with this kind of thing before. Jamal clenched his jaw. Too many times. Daniels nodded, his face unreadable. Well, just wanted to say, drive safe. Jamal didn't bother responding. He rolled up his window and finally pulled out of the parking lot. 20 minutes later, he was home. His apartment was small but comfortable, with framed photos of his family on the walls. He set his groceries on the counter, but his appetite was gone. Instead, he sank onto the couch, replaying the scene in his head. Linda had been so confident, so sure of her accusation, and even when she was proven wrong, she refused to admit it. He knew why. Some people didn't see black men as individuals. They saw threats. His phone buzzed on the coffee table, pulling him from his thoughts. It was his sister, Tamika. Hey, big brother, she greeted when he picked up. How's your day going? Jamal let out a dry laugh. You wouldn't believe me if I told you. Try me. He hesitated, then told her everything. The accusation, the cops, Linda's arrest. By the time he finished, Tamika was fuming. Are you serious? She really tried to get you locked up for getting into your own car? Yeah. You should post about this. People need to know what happened. Jamal rubbed the back of his neck. I don't know. I just want to move on. Tamika wasn't convinced. If you don't say something, she'll do it to someone else. Jamal sighed. She had a point. 2 hours later, he sat in front of his laptop, staring at a blank post. Should he call her out? Should he share what happened? He had a choice to make. Jamal stared at the blinking cursor, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. He wasn't the type to seek attention or start online debates, But Tamika's words echoed in his mind. If you don't say something, she'll do it to someone else. Taking a deep breath, he started typing. Earlier today, a woman called the cops on me because she assumed I was stealing my own car. Even after the officers confirmed the car was mine, she still insisted I was a criminal. But this time, she's the one who got in trouble for filing a false report. I'm sharing this because I know I'm not the first black man this has happened to, and I won't be the last. We have to keep talking about this. He stared at the post for a moment, then hit publish. The next morning, his phone wouldn't stop buzzing. He groggily reached for it, squinting at the screen. Hundreds of notifications, comments, shares, messages. What the hell? He muttered. Tamika had already texted him. You're going viral. Jamal sat up, fully awake now. He clicked on his post. Overnight, it had exploded. Thousands of people had shared it. Some offered support. Others shared their own experiences of racial profiling. Then there were the trolls. You're exaggerating. She was just being cautious. Maybe if you didn't drive an expensive car, people wouldn't assume you stole it. Not everything is about race. Jamal exhaled sharply, rubbing his temples. He knew this would happen. He knew some people would never get it. But what he didn't expect was the news coverage. Tamika sent him a link. A local news station had picked up the story. Then another. Then a national outlet. And then he saw her name, Linda Hayes. Someone had identified her, and now the internet had found everything. Her job, her social media, even an old post where she claimed to support equality for all. Jamal's stomach twisted. He hadn't meant for this to turn into a full-blown scandal. A new message popped up. Unknown number. Can we talk? He frowned. Unknown number. It's Linda. Please, I need to explain. Jamal stared at the screen. Linda. The woman who tried to get him arrested. Now she wanted to talk? Jamal's thumb hovered over the screen. Did he really want to hear what she had to say? His gut told him no. But curiosity, maybe even a tiny sense of justice, made him type back, Why should I? The typing bubble appeared instantly. Linda. Because everything is falling apart. I lost my job. My family won't speak to me. Please, I just want to explain. Jamal scoffed. Now she wanted to explain? Not when she was accusing him, not when she doubled down in front of the police, but now, when the internet turned on her. Linda. I wasn't trying to be racist. I swear. She stopped typing. A moment later, his phone rang. Jamal hesitated, then answered. What do you want, Linda? Her voice was shaky. I messed up. I see that now. Jamal leaned back against the couch. And what exactly do you see? A long pause. Then, that I judged you before I even knew the truth. That I assumed the worst because of how you look. Her voice cracked. I didn't mean. You did mean it, Linda, Jamal interrupted. That's the problem. Silence. Then she let out a shaky breath. I don't know how to fix this. Jamal clenched his jaw. You don't. You live with it. Just like I've had to live with people like you thinking I don't belong. Linda let out a quiet sob. I lost everything over one mistake. Jamal's grip tightened on the phone. One mistake? Linda, I could have lost my life. Another silence. Finally, she whispered, I'm sorry. Jamal closed his eyes. Goodbye, Linda. And he hung up. 2 weeks later, the story was still spreading. Jamal had done interviews, turned down TV appearances, and even gotten job offers from companies who admired how he handled the situation. But he didn't feel victorious. One day, while walking through his neighborhood, an older black man waved him over. You're that young man from the news, ain't you? Jamal nodded. Yeah, that's me. The man smiled. You did something real important, son. You didn't just stand up for yourself. You stood up for all of us. Jamal swallowed, nodding slowly. Maybe he hadn't wanted all this attention. But if his story made even one person think twice before making the same mistake Linda did, maybe it was worth it. A month later, things had finally settled. Jamal had returned to his normal routine: work, gym, weekends spent watching football with his friends. The initial wave of media attention had died down, and while some people still recognized him, most had moved on to the next big story. But the experience lingered in his mind. One evening, as he was leaving the grocery store, a woman hesitated before approaching him. She looked nervous, clutching her purse tightly. "Excuse me," she said. "Are you Jamal Patterson?" Jamal tensed. "Yeah." She nodded quickly. "I just wanted to say, I saw what happened to you, and She looked down, embarrassed. "I've probably made assumptions like that before. I didn't realize how dangerous it could be until I saw your story." Jamal studied her face. She looked genuine. "I appreciate you saying that," he said finally. She let out a relieved breath. "I'm trying to do better." Jamal nodded. "That's all anyone can do." As she walked away, he realized something. Change wasn't just about big moments, lawsuits, viral posts, national debates. Sometimes, change was just one person seeing the world differently than they did yesterday. 6 months later, Jamal got an unexpected call. Tamika's excited voice came through the phone. "You're going to want to check your email." Jamal raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Just do it." Curious, he opened his laptop. Sitting in his inbox was an invitation from the mayor's office. They wanted to honor him. Jamal stared at the screen, stunned. They were hosting a community event focused on racial bias and justice, and they wanted him to speak. Tamika was practically buzzing on the other end of the line. "This is huge, Jamal. You have to do it." Jamal hesitated. "I don't know. I'm not a speaker. I didn't plan any of this." "But it happened," Tamika said, "and you handled it with dignity. People need to hear from someone who lived it." Jamal sighed, rubbing his temple. "What if I say the wrong thing?" Tamika scoffed. "The wrong thing was what Linda did. You telling your truth? That's the right thing." Jamal exhaled. Maybe this wasn't just about him anymore. The following month, he stood on a stage before a packed audience. Cameras flashed, reporters whispered, but Jamal focused on the faces in front of him, the ones who came to listen, to learn. He took a deep breath and began. "I never wanted to be in this position," he said. "I never wanted to go viral. I never wanted to be a symbol for something I've been dealing with my whole life. But if my story can change even one mind, then maybe it was all worth it." As the audience erupted in applause, Jamal finally understood. This wasn't just about what had happened to him. It was about making sure it didn't happen to someone else. 1 year later, Jamal's life had changed in ways he never expected. The viral incident had been the worst day of his life, but in an odd twist of fate, it had opened doors he never knew existed. He had spoken at more events, been invited to community panels, and even started a mentorship program for young black men navigating racial bias in professional spaces. But despite all the progress, some wounds still lingered. One afternoon, he was grabbing coffee when he heard a familiar voice behind him. "Jamal?" His body tensed before he even turned around. Linda. She looked different. Her once perfectly styled blonde hair was pulled back into a simple ponytail, and there were dark circles under her eyes. She wasn't wearing the designer outfits she once flaunted, just a plain t-shirt and jeans. He wasn't sure what to feel. "Linda," he said, keeping his voice even. "Didn't expect to see you here." She swallowed, wringing her hands. I moved. Couldn't really stay in the neighborhood after everything." Jamal raised an eyebrow. "Why not?" She let out a short, humorless laugh. "Death threats. People boycotted my business. I lost my job. My husband divorced me." Jamal wasn't sure how to respond. She sighed. "I deserved most of it, I guess. But I wanted to tell you. I've been doing a lot of work on myself. I went to counseling. I've been volunteering at organizations that fight racial discrimination." She hesitated. "I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed you to know that I do understand what I did now. I understand how dangerous it was." Jamal studied her, looking for insincerity, but she seemed different, tired, humbled, maybe even ashamed. "I'm not the same person I was that day," she added softly. Jamal let out a slow breath. "You can't undo what happened, Linda," he said. "But if you're really serious about change, then do the work. Not for me, for yourself. For people like me who don't get second chances when someone makes a mistake." She nodded, looking down. "I will." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Then she gave him a small, sad smile. "Take care, Jamal." And she walked away. 2 years later, Jamal was flipping through the news when a headline caught his eye. Former Karen, who went viral, now works as an anti-racism activist. He blinked. The article detailed how Linda had dedicated her life to advocacy, speaking out about implicit bias, teaching workshops, and even helping to change policies in workplaces. Jamal didn't know if it was for redemption or if she truly meant it, but either way, people were listening, and maybe, just maybe, that meant something. Linda thought she was protecting her community, but in reality, she was fueling prejudice and putting an innocent man's life at risk. The story is a reminder that false assumptions can have dangerous consequences. Always question your biases, because the wrong judgment could ruin someone's life. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on post notifications to be the first to know when the next story drops.